Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and welcome to How. Daily, I bring you a different way to get stuff done. Today, I've got a very special one for you, which is a way to help you realize how to make change, which makes a transformational difference. It's called MetaMorph, so it's about morphing from one thing into another, but it's also meta because I'm trying to look at the bigger picture. Let's jump on Cube and have a look. So this was our attempt to help G7 leaders to metamorph, to do things differently. We built a cubicle for them so that they could meet and save lots of carbons and not have to travel and COVID and all the rest of it. Of course, they ignored us because most people do what they've always done and keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore. So they didn't respond. They didn't work on Cube, but we could have easily helped them save the planet and change the world. So let me just walk around this cubicle. This is one of my favorite cubicles. I love walking up the stairs here. So you walk up the stairs and then you walk up to the podium. And then once you're at the podium up here, you get to see the whole of the cubicle with the people below you and the people who are having coffee at the back. And we want to go right the way back here, which is where I've set up for you the MetaMorph pets to explain. So let's see what we've got there. Okay, so let's start here. Business has got lots of different bits to it, activity, technology, all sorts of things. But every single time a new piece of technology comes along, it provides an opportunity to do something different. And these days, there are tons of things. You can work with robotics, with AI, with digital, with Cube. Yeah, there's millions of different technologies you could use. And so what happens is a bit of hype happens. You'd have seen the Gartner hype curve, and people start talking about the technology. Now, the technology doesn't exist on its own. Technology lives in a world which I call the virtual world. There are three types of new world. The one you're probably familiar with, in my old world, new world, after midnight model, is the one which is the difference between the pace of change and our pace of learning. But there are two others, which sometimes I explain if people are more sophisticated so they can see the world more clearly. Here and Now world was a world where everything was physical, face-to-face, and so on. Virtual world is the world where the size of cyberspace has increased dramatically and our ability to utilize information has fallen behind. So there's lots of things which we could do. That's one. The other complexity, of course, is that in a world which is changing fast, we get what Nicholas Nassim Taleb would call extremistan. In other words, following the normal patterns like normal distribution curves, all the natural based things don't happen there. You can have a situation where you have 5 people, average height, I don't know, let's say 5'6" or average age 40, great. But if you take something like wealth, you could have 5 people and they could be worth a range from -100 to a trillion. In other words, there's no formula linking them anymore. That's extremistan. And this is the world we're in, where technology comes along and totally disrupts, and it doesn't relate to anything which has been before it. So I put together this slideshow, and this slideshow is really just to help people understand where they're going from. So in this world of extremistan, where basically the virtual world has taken over so that we're actually now linked into technology so much for our operations, the one on the left is the one you recognize. What we find is something new comes along. And if you're an old world organization, they've optimized it, you'll hear things in the corridor like, let's have a meeting to discuss. I know targets have been set. Our line managers called it. That's all old world stuff. It means you haven't really begun evolving. Your conversations will all be about efficiency and getting stuff done and flow charts and processes and stuff like that. And what you'll find is that most people spend all their efforts doing more of the same, looking for a formula for success. And there are very defined ways of working. When something new comes along, you'll tend to do what I call accessorize. You've got an old suit or an old outfit. You want to wear something new. You buy a new tie or you buy a new bauble to put on it. That's accessorizing. You're just adding accessories. So you'll find people will do things like bolt-ons. So for example, they'll hear, oh, our AI, what we've done is we've used that for our emails. It doesn't affect their actual system at all. I remember working in an organization once, and the way they were digitally transforming is they just given everyone iPads. Not for any purpose, but just so they could walk around with them so that they'd accessorized. That's the sort of thing. Bolt-ons are very common if the organization hasn't begun to transfer. This is a funny one about bolting things on. This is a horse-drawn carriage. This is a horseless carriage. But when you move from a horse-drawn carriage to a horseless carriage, Some people are stuck in their old worlds, love what they used to do. So what you do is, instead of getting rid of the horse, you take the horse and you attach it to your horse-drawn carriage, so your horseless carriage, so you've got a horse-ish-like carriage. This bad joke. Change. Some people try and do change. Basically, what they do is you bring a new technology, and instead of looking at new ways to work, they try and figure out how your new technology can fit into their current way of doing things. So, like we had this always with Cube. They say to us like things like, "Can we use a spreadsheet?" Instead of saying, "What is it we could do differently?" They take the technology and they try and squeeze it back to the limited thing which they were doing. And you'll hear that as well. They have not metamorphized. Metamorph is about trying to understand how a dragonfly or a butterfly changes from a larva into itself. So a caterpillar turning to a butterfly, or a dragonfly larva turning to, that's the metamorphosis. You basically dissolve everything which is there, and then you rebuild it as something completely new. If you're trying to backfill, you are definitely not building anything new. So we then have to understand that that's part of the reason that everyone's wondering I'm working so hard. You'd have seen this diagram, I hope. I have a high workload, so I don't have time to plan, so I don't realize how much work I've got. I keep saying yes, pushing my workload up, give me less time to plan. So I come close to deadlines other people think are important. They chase me, I get interrupted, I spend my time doing half-done jobs, pushing my workload, giving me no time to plan. So I don't realize how much I'm committed to because I haven't planned. So I say yes, and it goes round. So you'll find this as a pattern in many of the things around you. If you are in that stage, you'll be just rushing around in circles, challenging targets, things going south, which is where we started, and so on. So we want to transform. We want to go from here to here. A butterfly is never a caterpillar with wings stuck on it. So how do we do it? Well, to transform, we have to break and abandon past formulas and ways of working, find and create new competences, capabilities, and behaviors. So we have to find a way to use the technology to help us. And that's what MetaMorph is about. It's about working out where in the organization you are. So we get them to assign 100% of points to the stages. So the question is, how much of your time are you spending on more of the same? How much of it? And they use that to try to explain to themselves where they are. And generally, we find organizations who say they're transforming, they really aren't. They aren't transforming. They're just doing bolt-ons and more of the same. And this is what happens in the real world. They're doing more of the same. What they should be doing is generating the fuel for change. They should be squeezing all the money out so they can make the transition. Okay? Acquiring artifacts. No. They should be aligning operations to the customer, being customer-centric, because that's how they'll find out what's valuable to the customer. They shouldn't look internally at their own hierarchy. Backfilling opportunities. No. They should be developing capability for innovation and acceleration. They should be beginning to drive the culture to tolerate the smart change they need to make the transformation. They're busy focusing on this. What they should be doing is balancing and using push-pull of technology. What's the technology pushing? What can I pull? Bridging the gaps and so on. So it's really about trying to help people understand what they're working on first, and then what they should be doing. And sometimes we use this simple 2x2 graph just to get them to understand, because once they've understood, they can start the discussion. So are you doing new stuff or are you doing old stuff? They go, we're doing mostly old stuff. Okay. Are you doing it in new ways or are you doing it in old ways? We're doing it old ways. Okay. These are the characteristics. This way. So this particular metamorph grid is also useful because it helps people to align. I would say take what you're doing as a strategy or as personal, what you're doing in your own life, stick some of the activities you're doing in the 24-hour cycle, your day, into here, and figure out whether you're trying to transform or not, or whether tomorrow is going to be exactly the same as today. So that's it. That's MetaMorph. Make sure you read more about it in the quick guide. It's really useful because it's the only way of getting out of a pattern which you've probably been stuck in, or your organization is stuck in a complex, changing world. Spotify, YouTube, subscribe. There's a newsletter every week with other pets in it. Have a look at it on LinkedIn and make sure that you get some value from it. I've been Obeng. Have a wonderful time.